Genetic engineering has been in the spotlight recently because of work being done overseas. A Chinese geneticist altered the DNA of 2 human embryos to be born with a resistance to the HIV virus. While this seems like a major breakthrough for mankind, many scientists and experts in the field question whether this procedure was really ethical. The safety of the humans and organisms around it were questioned. While genetic engineering has not always been this advanced, it shows many positive possibilities for the future. It has its origins as a breeding technique used by farmers to increase crop production in their fields. Today, technology like CRISPR allows for researchers to change single strands of DNA, which creates numerous opportunities for all people in the field of genetic engineering. Genetic engineering's new possibilities include fighting cancer, human disease, and solving some of the problems brought about by climate change. Because of these life-changing possibilities, government regulation and public disapproval of genetic engineering needs to be reconstructed so that the science can achieve its full capacity in today's age and time and bring about changes as soon as possible. Genetic engineering shows amazing possibilities brought about by new technology in the field. CRISPR allows scientists to reach parts of an organism that have since been unalterable and unreachable by. Another exciting part of genetic engineering is the possibilities being brought by technology being added to the field of study every year. The article Brave New World of Genetic Engineering technologies are advancing at a furious rate, changing the world one cell at a time, really means what it says in the title. New technology called cryo-EM allows scientists to digitally picture and image DNA strands. This allows for cutting-edge technology and precision whenever altering DNA. Contrary to public knowledge, genetic engineering is already impacting agriculture. Chemical pesticide use has been reduced by 30%, and crop yield has been increased by 20%. Now, these changes are brought about by genetic engineering, specifically gene therapy. The decrease in pesticides are important because while the decrease in pesticide use is important, even though the genetic engineered crops are being used as animal feed, the animals are later consumed by humans, which can be affected by those pesticides. The increase in yield is extremely important to fight climate change. There are less acres of fertile land available for cultivation. Crop production needs to increase because of growing food demand across the world. The increase in population drives food demand up exponentially. With an expected population of over 9 billion by 2050, the production of cereals would need to double to meet the food demand. An increase in yield brought about by genetic engineering can help meet the growing food demand. Genetic engineering has yet to be applied to foods consumed by humans. Agriculture can be greatly impacted if genetic engineering were used to increase the yield of things like wheat, which are consumed largely by humans. Increasing plant yield has already proven successful for past generations. Previous increases in plant yield are responsible for agriculture's ability to go from feeding only 3 billion people in 1960 to over 7 billion in 2011, with only a slight increase in the amount of land under cultivation. This is important again because climate change decreases the amount of acres available for cultivation. Public disapproval of genetic engineering proves a roadblock. At the Romsted Research Centre in London, a protester tried to sabotage the experimental wheat field by spreading normal wheat seeds among the altered seeds. This would have ruined the experiment if they had gone unnoticed. Later that year, hundreds of protesters marched arm in arm to the gates of the field before having to be stopped by the police. Now, these protesters' disapproval is misplaced. At the research center, they are trying to alter wheat so that it has a resistance to a pest that commonly fatigues fields of crops. The The research being conducted is in a safe, controlled environment that will not harm the environment. And in safety management and risk communication of genetically modified organisms, it is suggested that popularizing knowledge about genetic engineering through newspaper and network television will help them understand and gain support for genetic engineering. This will eliminate blind panic to genetic engineering because people have concerns over designer babies. Gene therapy to fight human disease is showing astonishing strides to save numerous lives. In the article A Cure for One, we are informed that 4 therapies have been approved to fight human diseases such as blood cancer and hemophilia. This is important because genetic engineering can be applied to humans easily, just with the proper research and time. However, slow methods of approval by governing bodies such as the FDA and EPA slow this life-saving research. In the same article, A Cure for One, we learned that about 15 drugs are approved a year regarding gene therapy in human trials. It could take thousands of years for companies to get around to all of them. This slow method of approval really harms the advance of gene therapy and life-saving research. One of the biggest problems genetic engineering faces is the public fear of designer babies. Now, a designer baby would be parents adjusting their baby's height, size, eye color, hair, appearance with the use of gene therapy. Now, using gene therapy as a genetic enhancement tool is almost inevitable, as it will be driven by nations competing for superior technology and other nations striving to cure diseases. Now, in the slippery slope argument in the ethical debate on genetic engineering of humans, it is explained that once gene therapy is efficient in curing disease, the technology will stretch to the field of enhancement on humans by parents, even against popular opinion. Competition between individuals and nations will drive the acceptance of the technology as legal and political systems recognize its success. What that means is that as genetic engineering is perfected through curing disease and modifying organisms, it will be applied as a genetic enhancement tool to humans. And this is the idea of eugenics, creating a superhuman race of people. And many people fear that this would create an unfair advantage for people in society. And I drew this connection with 1984 being that it could create a permanent higher class that has been put in that position by their genetic enhancements. Now, even though this sounds awful, it is not that bad because everyone can benefit from genetic enhancement. Once people start to realize that other families are benefiting from these genetic enhancements, they will quickly join in on the genetic enhancement. Another concern that people have is that with putting the best traits in the best sections of DNA in each person, the human race's DNA will become less diverse and more similar, meaning that it is less adaptive to different diseases that could come down the road. But this problem can be solved by the same way it was caused. With gene therapy, anything is possible, and quick antidotes can be stirred up to fit a custom person. So DNA will never become too alike that it will doom the human race. Another big problem is the safety of GMOs. Now, GMOs have caused a lot of problems in grocery stores, and many people avoid them for fear that they cause cancer. This fear that GMOs cause cancer is completely misplaced, as there are no studies linking human cancer to GMO consumption. Now, there are short-term studies that show no adverse effects of GM crops for many species of animals. This study was conducted on animals because humans have yet to largely consume GM products. Now, these animals that are fed crops show no adverse effects, but this is only a short-term study. Usually, short-term studies are indicative of long-term studies, but a multi-generational study will take a long time and should only prove the effects and the conclusions of a short-term study. And then the reason genetic engineering takes so long to reach humans is because it is first applied to agriculture, where it can be safely tested with no blowback. But with humans, it is a one and done situation because a misstep in altering DNA can cause death, as it has in many lab situations with animals. However, genetic engineering has successfully been used to clone animals and shows promising steps towards changing mankind. Engineering promises to solve some of the problems ailing the world population. Climate change can be fought by increasing yield of crop fields, whenever land under cultivation is scarce. Another thing that increasing yield does is help supply the exponential food demand. With an increasing world population, food demand is a huge problem that agriculture faces. One of the most interesting aspects of genetic engineering is its application to fighting human disease. Some diseases that have gone undefeated for many, many years can now be solved with research using gene therapy. Some of the previous victories of gene therapy over disease, including that of blood cancer and hemophilia, are just glimpses into what is possible. And with governing regulations like the FDA and EPA still using tight boundaries and slow methods of approval over research, life-saving procedures like the hemophilia and blood cancer therapies are being delayed and lives are being lost because of that. With the help of public approval, genetic engineering can be boosted into its full capacity and brought into current time. Lives can be saved with the applications of gene therapy. With the advancement of genetic engineering in the 21st century, hopefully the public will be able to see some more creative experiments, such as the monkeys with human intelligence and the human embryos with an HIV resistance, come into play this century. With the help of those experiments, mankind will better understand science and withstand adversity. Another interesting part about these experiments is that they should help the public overcome their fear and stigmas. Once they overcome their fear of genetic engineering being used as an enhancement tool and their consumption of GM products, genetic engineering will be able to flourish under the approval of the public. One of the only things left to question is what other creative experiments can be used to help mankind.